These are the times when MasterChef dishes left the judges stunned. For good or ill? Well, you have to be the judge. But let's start off with an easy one. This one here had a whole lot of flavors. Sure, they should have never come together. Each season of MasterChef brings an insane amount of flavor to the table, but that doesn't mean the flavors always work. Today, I'll be going over one cook from each season that nailed the competition if it was scored like golf. And if I have to pick one contestant from season 1, it would be her.
I was like, oh, I'm in heaven.
Although Farouk came very close in competition for being my very first pick for the day, I guess some of you might be up in arms for going with Avis instead, right? I mean, no doubt, she was one of the kindest souls we've ever seen on the show, but being sweet and full of enthusiasm doesn't always translate to being a great cook, huh? Sadly, no matter how hard she tried, her culinary skills barely hit the mark. Like, take what happened during the elimination challenge of episode 4 for instance.
The theme is Chinese.
Having won the previous mystery box challenge, Winnie had the choice to pick the star ingredient, and she went with mandarin oranges. Now, every contestant was tasked with skillfully incorporating the citrus delight into Chinese cuisine creations. While most contestants were pumped up, Avis was sweating bullets.
The problem is, I don't know how to make the perfect Chinese dish.
Well, it looks like things just got 10 times tougher for her. And guess what? When Chef Ramsay stopped by for a quick update, Avis was all over the place.
This is my carrots. I'm going to go ahead on and just, cook my
Boiled carrots.
See what I mean? Apparently, she was gonna use carrots, but Chef Ramsay wasn't in on her plan.
Looks like she's panicking, and it shows in terms of what she's put together. Yes. Big trouble in Little China.
Anyway, cut to the tasting, and Avis presented her Chinese orange chicken with vegetables and noodles. And right off the bat, Chef Ramsay wasn't impressed.
Is that a dish to be proud of in the 21st century?
Clearly, the dish looked like a disaster, but Avis thought otherwise.
Yes, it is.
And when it was time for the tasting? Well, maybe everyone would have been better off if they just judged the book by its cover.
It looks like a sort of little chicken noodle vegetable dinner from a gas station.
Damn, that was brutal. But nope, he didn't stop there.
Now, I don't see the authenticity of a unique Chinese delicious dish.
Avis's heart sank as reality hit her like a ton of bricks. Eventually, she ended up being one of the very first contestants to be eliminated from the MasterChef kitchen. But before she left, the judges urged her to keep cooking and honing her skills.
Avis, you've got such heart and soul that you put into your food, which is inherent in cooking.
Well, of course, Avis would be the only one with the unique honor of being the first to go, but she was far from the last. Now, heading over to season 2, and this contestant here, if you thought Avis was bad, well, let me say that we're just getting started.
I want to run over to Adrian and just give him a big hug right now.
Yup, I'm talking about none other than Alvin, known for his vast culinary knowledge alongside a technical arsenal used for molecular gastronomy.
I'm hoping that carries me through today.
However, despite all that, he failed to execute, well, anything properly. And it really caught up with him in episode 7's elimination test.
Theme for today's elimination test is desserts.
And what was the main ingredient of the theme, you ask? Check this out.
Coffee.
And so the test began. The contestants were given 1 hour and 30 minutes to make an exquisite dessert. Now Alvin was feeling really confident about the challenge. But when Joe and Graham reached the station, they were pretty taken aback by his ideas.
I'm trying to pull off coffee spheres to put in the beignet before
so like
they
a
fry.
liquid center,
yeah,
Cafe
liquid
du
center,
Monde.
yeah.
Our guy here was putting his molecular gastronomy to the test, that's for sure. But Joe reminded him not to get lost in the weeds, no matter how scientific those weeds were.
Are you out of your mind? Make us dessert. It's not a chemistry experiment.
You need to convert him.
And finally, when it was time to present his dish, well...
Mixed with sodium alginate, so set to cool, and that's dropped into a calcium chloride bath.
Now, I'm not a fan of what it looks like, and I'm sure I'm far from the only one with that opinion. But guess what it tasted like?
It's extraordinarily bitter.
As if that wasn't enough, Chef Ramsay then came up with a rather unsettling description.
There's like a coffee blood clot.
Yikes, not sure where Chef Ramsay got that idea from. But leave it to Graham, and he decided to keep things real.
Things like this give what I personally do day in and day out a bad name.
Now, there's a reason why molecular gastronomy is popular in the fanciest restaurants the world over. If you can nail it, it's gonna be a hit, but if you can't, well, you'll be like Alvin over here. Like Chef Ramsay's parting words for Alvin, had he understood the basics before getting into the more complicated stuff, who knows, maybe he could have gone further into the competition. But well, there's no coming back from some mistakes, just like what happened with this next contestant from season 3. See, there are those who deserve to be a part of the show, and then there are those who absolutely don't. And Tally is the poster child for the latter.
Oh man.
If you ask me, I think Tally should have never made it onto the show in the first place. The fact that he found himself in the bottom 3 more times than not should be a reason enough to believe that his culinary skills weren't up to par, right?
They can't see the beauty and the genius that is my food.
And if that wasn't enough, don't even get me started on his attitude.
I'm gonna have to throw someone under the bus.
So it happened during a Say It With Me Now elimination test, and the theme of the night was everything fish.
Because it's time to go fishing.
Now, the winner of the Mystery Box Challenge, being Felix, got to hand select each and every fish that her competitors would be cooking. And she got to choose from a wide range of fish, being rockfish, John Dory, catfish, yellowtail, salmon, and Arctic char. So, eventually, she settled with Arctic char for Tally. It's probably one of the easiest fish if you know what to do with it. But this guy did not, and that's for sure. During the rounds when Chef Ramsay reached Tally's table, he was already questioning Tally's poor choices.
Fish?
Sous vide it.
Yeah. And I'm going to finish it on the skillet.
It's an oily fish.
Apparently, Tally thought the fish would cook in its own juices, but, well, maybe he should have studied the science with our old pal Alvin, huh? Regardless, Chef Ramsay wished him luck and moved on. God knows he needed it. Soon enough, the judges were discussing each contestant's dishes, and it seemed like Tally was the top of their concerns.
Arctic char is certainly the easiest fish here today. You could steam it, grill it, saute it.
And no, that wasn't the only issue. Now, listen to this.
Serving green lentils with it, bacon, mustard.
All those flavors are gonna obliterate it.
What's more, Graham chimed in with his own set of complaints.
I mean, that's stuff that you would serve with like a nice roasted piece of meat.
Sometime later, when the judges urged the contestants to taste their own dishes before calling it a day, Tally realized that things weren't exactly going his way.
You rub the Arctic char and Dijon mustard.
It was time for Plan B, which was a rather risky move. But Tally went with it anyway.
Beautiful sous vide filet on the skillet. I might just serve it like this.
You can serve it like that now?
Yeah.
Chef Ramsay, however, wasn't happy with his little plan, as the fish was stone cold. However, Tally reassured him that he could fix it. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. Now, guess what Tally had to say about the whole ordeal.
It's frustrating when Chef Ramsay interrupts me in the middle of my creative genius explosion.
Wait for it.
It's kind of like interrupting a master artist like Picasso.
And there it is. Now, you must be wondering what the final tasting was like. Look, I don't want to spoil this for you, so you better check it out for yourselves.
Kind of produce a...
And when Joe interrupts you like that, believe me, it's not a good sign.
You think you're going to impress us with things like sous vide, emulsify?
Calling his dish a mess would be an insult to messes all over the world, right?
So at the end of the day, what you have here is basically destroyed lentils.
All you could see was a bunch of herbs with no seasoning and a piece of fatty bacon on top of poorly cooked Arctic char. Simply put, it looked really sad.
You've consistently disappointed us.
And Chef Ramsay didn't hold back either.
And I watch you cook and I just get so pissed off with you around.
But just you wait till you hear what he had to say next.
It's MasterChef, not Master Bait.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of that iconic line from Chef Ramsay before, but did Tally own up to his mistake? Not really.
Maybe they're just a little too old school, and they can't see the beauty and the genius that is my food.
Well, there was only one way to humble him, and that was to show him the damn door. But let's keep things moving, shall we? You see, Sasha from season 4 was all about confidence.
You sure you want to put cheese on it?
It's gonna work out, trust me, darling.
But hey, confidence can only take you so far, right? Because once the heat of the competition cranked up, she got booted out just like that. Hailing from Alabama, Sasha's gone down as the first contestant to place 19th in the history of the competition. Now, let me remind you, it wasn't anything to be proud of. The whole Langue de Sin episode? Sasha's confidence took a nosedive as soon as her dish was presented to the judges.
It looks like someone's pooped on the plate.
But guess what? She held her head high. She wasn't about to bow down to some criticism from a bunch of glorified judges. Oh no, Sasha was sure of her skills. But the judges, not so much.
It doesn't taste nice at all. The combination's just all wrong.
One after the other, Sasha faced every ounce of negative feedback like it wasn't even about her dish.
What's it worth now?
With the grits, I'll say 55.
Anyway, considering her dish made it safely into the trash, her elimination wasn't much of a surprise. By the way, did you know that Sasha kicked off with Chrissy and Kathy almost as soon as they met?
Bacon!
Now, imagine if she stayed in the competition for longer. I can't imagine the kind of drama they would have collectively brought to the table.
Let her have her moment, because I don't think it's going to last very long.
Either way, with Sasha's elimination, the judges made it a point to send a message across all the contestants. In the MasterChef kitchen, it isn't sass, but skill that counts, and Sasha had none. Now, moving on, my pick from Season 5 is obviously Francis.
And Christian and I both know it. We look at each other, we're like, this is not what we should have put out there. And
so, if you caught up to Season 5 of MasterChef, you know that Francis was a pretty solid chef who had a pretty great vibe with everyone. But when it came to teamwork or replicating dishes, he was kinda lacking big time. That is exactly what went down in Episode 7's Spring Rolls Pressure Test.
Spring rolls. Served with a delicious dipping sauce.
So during the tasting, Francis presented his spring rolls, but it failed to make an impression.
The ratio of filling is obviously way out of proportion.
There was so much oil that Joe even pressed a piece under the napkin to show how the cold oil penetrated the wrapper.
These are really greasy.
But just you wait for the final blow.
Well, if you go home tonight, you could order in some spring rolls.
Out of all the mistakes he could have made, it had to be grease. Eventually, Francis found himself in a really sticky situation that he could never recover from. Yup, it turned out to be his very last day on the show. Now, coming to Season 6, and this contestant made more enemies than friends in the competition. You see, Shelly was a fighter.
I'm a single mom, and I got a 9-year-old who's my everything. She's my biggest cheerleader.
Given her rough background, her determination and passion to make a name on MasterChef shone through as she put immense hard work into the competition.
I'm just happy that I believed enough to get here.
But gradually, things started to go downhill. From shying away from responsibility to randomly throwing teammates under the bus, Shelly's journey had a massive fall from grace. With time, she started to lose her footing and her cooking got more and more inconsistent. But if I have to pick her worst performance, it would be this dish right here.
Peanut butter and jelly 5-spice spring roll.
And well, what started on a rough note ended in an even bigger mess.
And that looks like a stuffed condom.
Plus, you know what? He is not wrong. With that, let's move on to Season 7, when the elimination test in Episode 6 came down heavy on one particular contestant. So, the contestants had to prepare a lobster tortellini, and right off the bat, they started having a really hard time.
I don't know what to put my eggs in.
Focus, Lisa Ann.
Things got so bad that Ramsay had to walk over to her station and remind her to get her act together. Now, Ramsay gave her probably some of the best advice he's ever given, but what did she give him in return? That's one way to say thank you, I guess. Either way, her cooking skills didn't make anything better.
4 tortellinis burst. And look, it's got no top on it.
Now, that was just tortellini. Wait till you see what happened with the broth.
It's a little salty.
Things got heated real fast when Chef Ramsay questioned how serious she was about the competition.
You know how hard I worked to get here?
I'm not convinced.
I worked really hard to get here.
MasterChef is all about letting your food do the talking and not your empty promises. However, the famous chef was done with her excuses, and she got the boot before she even had the time to process what he'd said. But this next contestant came close in competition when you consider her not so impressive track record on the show.
That fish was spicy?
Yup, that's Paige for you, the self-proclaimed culinary whiz that MasterChef really could have done without. You see, Paige was so full of herself that her one single move tanked an entire team challenge. Yeah, all on her own. As a result, she found herself facing a pressure test, where the contestants had to recreate Aaron's grilled pork chop dish. Now, you'd think after the over-seasoning disaster earlier, she'd be humble about this one, right? Well, you don't know Paige.
I'm confident that I can replicate it. I'm half Mexican, so I'm pretty familiar with Mexican flavors.
Right.
Despite her misplaced confidence, Paige's attempt to recreate the dish left a lot to be desired.
Just that stark white fat, unrendered.
Definitely.
You're almost a little too smiley for me for this pressure test.
Christina found Paige's pork chop to be messy and undercooked, and the sauce, well, listen to this.
Definitely over-reduced to sloppy. It's messy. It's almost like you just don't care anymore.
Despite her smiley demeanor, Paige couldn't hide from the harsh reality. Her dish was a flop, and her confidence maybe was a tad misplaced, like I said. It was clear that she had a lot to learn, and it wasn't just her time to be on the show. Just like this next contestant right here. Hopping over to Season 9, Episode 5, and contestants were faced with the daunting task of recreating Chef Ramsay's Crab Benedict in just 30 minutes. Yeah, recreation challenges have been an Achilles heel for even the best chefs. But for Alushila, well, she certainly wasn't the best chef.
That ain't right. I gotta do another one.
You got it, Lulu.
Up one egg.
Useless eggs are all over the place.
Time was slipping away and she was clearly flustered. But as the clock ran out, Alushila presented her dish to the judges, and Chef Ramsay's reaction said it all.
I already know.
Her presentation was a disaster. She didn't even bother using the utensils that everyone was provided with.
And then I see this. Where is that black plate?
It was very clear that she had missed the mark by a long shot. Despite the well-poached egg and perfectly seasoned crab, Alushila's incomplete plate sealed her fate. But hey, at least she left with her head held high, promising to continue cooking. Unlike this next contestant from season 10.
I'm feeling like really confident and I'm super excited.
So I did have a hard time picking the worst contestant from season 10, but then I zeroed in on this one right here.
I've got the deepest knowledge base that's out there. I've traveled the world. I know about a ton of ingredients.
Now that's called overconfidence. And don't even get me started on his attitude too.
I don't need Gordon's step-by-step instructions. I can knock out awesome dishes.
To make matters worse for himself, when he was throwing together his tart, he forgot to save the juices he'd taken out.
What is that?
Looking down at the tart, it looks really dry.
Oh no, there was no way they could keep him on the show after this.
Where is the caramel? Look, there's nothing. There's no caramel. This is not a tarte tatin. This is an apple tart.
You know, the less said about him, the better. Speaking of saying less, this next pick from season 11 was real easy.
I'm definitely going to show the judges why it was a good choice keeping me here.
Considering all the failed dishes that she had, Anai was determined to prove herself in the kitchen. But unfortunately, it only got worse. So the contestants were tasked with preparing a restaurant-quality dessert. However, Anai's dessert left much to be desired.
What you have in front of you is an avocado no-bake cheesecake, topped off with a dragon fruit.
Her avocado no-bake cheesecake sounded really intriguing, but the judges were less than impressed.
We still have the base of the actual cheesecake.
The base of the cheesecake still had the mold underneath it, and it wasn't even completely baked. Or like at all, considering, well, the whole no-bake part of it. Now, imagine if the judges had to tell that the cheesecake looked more like a dip than an actual cheesecake.
You cut corners when it came to even grabbing graham crackers.
And the taste? It was even worse.
The base is uncooked. I think you rushed the whole thing.
Now, just like that, Anai's time in the competition came to an end. Good riddance.
It's hard to get away from this execution.
To not bake or cook anything in a baking challenge for me is a disappointment.
Speaking of satisfying eliminations, when this next guy got the boot, it was so cathartic, but he took his damn time leaving. If you ask me, season 12 had a whole lot of good. Good food, good cooks, good challenges, and then there was Tommy.
I'm afraid of those difficult ones.
After dodging the bullet like a million times leading up to this moment, Tommy finally gave up in this dessert round.
Into the blast chiller instead of the refrigerator. It's as hard as a rock.
I mean, what a mess. The dessert and Tommy, both of them.
Tommy, I can get it back together.
Fast forward to the judgment time, and Tommy's lemon meringue tart was nothing short of a catastrophe. I mean, think about it. That runny mess you're looking at was supposed to be a tart. I bet you wouldn't have been able to figure that out without me telling you. And let's not even get started on the cracked crust and misplaced meringue.
It's totally raw.
Well, Tommy's dish ended up being the worst of the lot. Shocker.
Your meringue is over whipped, it's watery. I think it's clear. Time was a big issue for you.
While he did make quite the emotional exit, I'm sure that there were many who were glad that he was finally on his way out. And you could count me among them any day of the week. And now, it's finally time for season 13. Who do you think made it onto the list? Kendall, of course. To me, Kendall always skated by the skin of his teeth thanks to another contestant winning immunity for his region. I guess he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. All the freaking time. However, in episode 10, he unnecessarily complicated things for everyone on his team. So, the challenge was to cook for 100 children. As the team split up, Kendall seemed really confident.
I think Sav is a little worried about the chicken, but I am a barbecue grand champion. I've won a ton of awards.
However, he quickly stumbled on the blue team's grill, much to Chef Ramsay's dismay.
This isn't your wheelhouse. Own it and control it.
Yes.
Can we finish strong, Kendall?
Yes, Chef.
But did he care? Of course not.
Kendall? No answer. Oh my goodness me.
Sorry.
Now the famous chef could see right through his act. He held him accountable for the humiliating loss. He then blamed his overconfidence and lack of communication to be the reason behind his elimination. Yeah, try winning immunity now that you single-handedly tanked your team, bro. So, do you agree with my ranking of the worst chef from each season? Make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And like I said near the beginning of the video, sometimes even the best dishes can leave the judges grasping for words. Just like what this contestant here played it up. When this contestant presented her dish, the judges simply couldn't resist falling in love with it. And that's just one of the times when the judges love the food on MasterChef. Now, this is a culinary celebration you wouldn't want to miss. And there's no other way I'd like to get started than to bring up the first ever blind contestant and winner of MasterChef Season 3. I, of course, mean the remarkably talented and skilled chef Christine Ha. But when Christine presented her dish in the 5th episode, something unexpected happened. She brought everyone to tears, including herself.
Come on. Come on.
So, what exactly happened that stirred up so many emotions in everyone? Well, it's pretty simple. Christine simply blew everyone away with her apple pie. I mean, just listen to the crustiness of this pastry here.
Can you hear that on top?
Yes, chef.
What does that sound like to you?
It sounds good and crusty.
Well, if you ask me, that sounds absolutely delicious.
The flavor's amazing.
So what happened is, the blue team had lost the challenge and the red team had to face a super intense pressure test. One of them was definitely going home and everyone was feeling the heat.
Go into a pressure test after what I already feel was a pressure test. I'm just really stressed out.
The next day, all the chefs gathered for a pressure test, and guess what? They had to make apple pies, the most American of desserts. But here's the catch. Christine, who was visually impaired, was worried about how it would go down.
I know I need to still put that pie together, and so I'm thinking this is my night, I'm going home.
It's really sad how she thought this challenge might get her eliminated. Like, could you imagine the stress she was experiencing? Despite that, Christine didn't let her lack of confidence hold her back. All the contestants had to make the same damn thing with the same freaking ingredients. The only difference being, they had to add something special to stand out from the rest. The chefs were then given an hour and 15 minutes to work their magic. As for the judgment, this pressure test would be judged based on the filling of the crust and the overall baking techniques used to whip up some delicious apple pies. It was a high-pressure situation, and everyone was feeling the heat. And you could really see that the tension kept getting worse.
Cindy, did I cut myself? Am I bleeding?
Now, I get why Christine turned into a nervous wreck. The judges were aware that Christine was at a disadvantage as well once the pie hit the oven. How could she know if the pie was cooked if she couldn't see the color of the crust? And that's exactly what was worrying Christine sick.
I'm gonna have to rely on Cindy to tell me the color of the crust.
But despite all the challenges and the fact that she snipped her finger, yes, that happened too, Christine was literally trying to give it her 100%. And it's not just me. Several viewers were totally on board rooting for Christine to stay in the competition. People couldn't help but notice her calmness, determination, and unwavering strength. Even when she doubted herself, she approached each challenge with a level of excellence and professionalism that was truly inspiring. One viewer noticed how there was not a hint of cockiness or arrogance in this woman, just a genuine sense of self that went beyond the awareness of her own incredible abilities. She proved to be a true master in every sense of the word. The three judges had their own doubts, but they were also really hopeful.
But the thing is, she does know how to cook and she knows how to season.
With only 40 minutes left, it was time to put the pie inside the oven. And this challenge turned out to be hard not only for Christine, but all the other contestants as well. Somehow, none of them had been able to get their pies baking yet. But things got even tougher for Christine when this happened.
There's no way, I just don't have any more flour. Felix, do you have extra flour?
I'm sure she never expected that to happen. The flour literally broke into pieces and she ran out of it. Christine had to ask another contestant for some extra flour. And well, at this stage of the competition with time closing in, everyone started to doubt if she could make it. But Christine didn't give up. She started from scratch and whipped up a new pie in no time. The sad part is, she couldn't visualize her pie nor could she taste it, which made things even more challenging for her. And when the time was up, Christine was the last one to have her dish judged. Despite her visual impairment, her pie looked amazing and the judges were blown away.
Visually, it looks stunning. It's got a nice crisp, dark brown colour on the edge.
Chef Ramsay, being his usual self, tried to boost her morale by asking her to stop doubting herself.
Stop feeling upset with yourself.
And finally, it was time to give the pie a taste. When Chef Ramsay took a bite of Christine's apple pie, you'll have to watch the video to find out what happened next. Trust me, it's worth it.
It's delicious. So well done. Okay.
I think Ramsay was moved more by the flavors of the dish than her tears, and Christine deserved every bit of that appreciation. Several users mentioned that Christine was their all-time favorite contestant on the show, and whatever she accomplished with her disability was truly inspiring. They even appreciated the efforts taken by Ramsay to explain every single detail of her pie, which was very heartwarming indeed. Another user beautifully explained how Christine was a gem who didn't give a crap if someone had anything negative to say about her. Well, that's how Christine is. Going by the way she navigated throughout the entire competition, it should be proof enough to validate this statement. But sometimes you need to pay the price because of the mistakes made by others. Yeah, team challenges can sometimes be unfair to a few contestants, but that's what the show is all about. Well, something similar happened to this contestant who should have ideally been chilling up on the balcony, safe and sound. But here's the thing. Even if he's a badass chef, would he be able to impress the judges with his food and make it to the top 5? Well, let's just see what happened. In the 15th episode of Season 7, the contestants were driven to a pop-up restaurant. Once there, they had to whip up 2 appetizers and 2 entrees for the guests. The teams were led by David Williams and Katie Dixon, and this guy named Sean O'Neill was on Katie's red team. Now, after all the hustle, the blue team won. But let me tell you, Sean from the red team didn't deserve to be called a loser. He was an amazing chef, hands down. He nailed the pop-up restaurant challenge, and there was no doubt about it.
So you guys enjoying the red team's food tonight? Oh yeah, red team. Great, all the way.
But now, the poor red team had to face a freaking pressure test. They were presented with 3 amazing chocolates by each judge. And what was the task, you ask? Well, check this out for yourselves.
You won't be making just one of these desserts tonight. You'll be making all 3.
They had to make 3 chocolate desserts in just 1 hour. Talk about real pressure. Each contestant had to prove that they had what it takes to be the next MasterChef of America. With such little time, needless to say, they had to hustle like crazy.
Just take that, Dan. Take that. Just take that, Dan. Just take that.
Once the time was up, the judges were ready to taste the chocolates. Now, Sean's first 2 chocolates didn't blow them away, but that doesn't mean they didn't taste good. However, when it came to the last chocolate, Ramsay gave it a bite, and this is how he reacted.
Chocolate molten lava cake is beautiful.
That thing was cooked to perfection within such a little amount of time. Meanwhile, the other 2 contestants struggled to get their desserts right. And let me tell you, Sean's dessert didn't just look good, it tasted freaking heavenly. Plus, this is what Chef Ramsay had to say.
It's delicious.
It was really emotional to see that his hard work was being appreciated and that everyone in the room felt the same.
I pushed myself so hard.
That's what MasterChef is all about.
And when it was time for the results, just as you'd expect, Sean was the first one to be saved. The judges couldn't stop praising him and giving him props. But sadly, poor Katie got eliminated. They asked her who she thought would win MasterChef, and she didn't hesitate to say this.
Sean, the way that he's handled himself throughout this competition, I truly respect.
Yeah, he's a badass chef who aced every damn challenge thrown at him. However, imagine what it feels like to whip up an award-winning masterpiece. Later on, the contestants were asked to make a dish using only the ingredients from a mystery box in the 5th episode of Season 2. Nobody expected to see one contestant stand out from the others by a long shot. The judges were all set to pick their top 3 dishes and the absolute worst ones as well. But here comes the surprise that everyone was dying to know. What exactly were those mystery ingredients? Well, let's find out. When it was time for the judging, they first announced the worst dish, and guess what? Poor Ben Starr's dish took that title. It was a major bummer. Then the first dish that caught everyone's attention was Susie Singh's. She went all out and cooked up pickled salmon, smoked salmon, and grilled salmon. But here's the twist. The judges weren't blown away by the taste, but at least they were satisfied. However, this is where things get really insane. Brace yourself for this contestant named Christian Collins, who literally made the others shake in their boots.
I think would certainly win the award for being the most restaurant-ready. Christian.
Yeah, his dish was considered award-worthy. The judges were about to taste it and see whether it was worth the hype. And let me tell you, he didn't disappoint. Christian cooked up a pistachio-crusted salmon with strawberry and balsamic reduction. And well, it was a flavor explosion. First came Joe Bastanich, who couldn't help but shower him with compliments. He said that the salmon was cooked to perfection, crispy on top, but still juicy and tender on the inside. But here comes the bonus.
And the bonus was the effective use of the strawberries. Well done.
Then came Graham Elliott, who had a very similar reaction. He had seen other contestants attempting to crust their fish with pistachios, but Christian's dish was next level. The crust was even and beautifully done.
Yeah, really yummy. Really good job.
And now it was time for the one and only Chef Ramsay to taste it. Could you imagine the pressure? But guess what? This is how it turned out.
Absolutely on the money. Good job. Well done.
Ramsay was straight up impressed by the taste and quality of the dish. Damn, that's a remarkable feat, impressing all the judges like that. It's not an easy task, but Christian did it. And with this dish, he left his mark on MasterChef like no other. In fact, he became the freaking winner of the first Mystery Box Challenge. How awesome is that?
Congratulations, Christian. Woo!
As a reward, he got to choose the style of food that everyone would have to cook for the elimination challenge. Now, that's a major power right there. Christian showed everyone that he was a force to be reckoned with in the kitchen. Alright, next, let me spill the beans about this gutsy contestant from season 10 who decided to ditch playing it safe and went all out with a challenging dish. Plus, he did it in the limited time that he had. So, in the 5th episode, the judges tasted a little bit of every dish and checked out the presentation. Then, before picking the best dish, they decided to choose the worst 3 of the night. And it turned out to be Samuel Has, Elizabeth Lin, and Fred Chang. But luckily, it wasn't elimination time, so they were safe for now. Phew!
You 3 are lucky that tonight is not elimination.
Now, it was time for the judges to go deeper into the other dishes that stood out. They called each contestant forward, and one contestant was specifically summoned because their dish looked incredible. Seriously, it could rival a fancy restaurant dish. The contestant, Nick DiGiovanni, whipped up a mouth-watering Brazilian cheese bread taco with grilled skirt steak, corn salsa, and snapper ceviche.
And the fact that you did this is so bold, young man.
Thank you, Chef.
Clearly, the judges were really impressed by the presentation of the ceviche. They declared it to be the best of the evening. But here comes the plot twist. Despite the high expectations and drool-worthy appearance, this is what Aaron Sanchez had to say.
You went overboard on the Scotch bonnet. You really need to tone that down, young man.
With that, now it was time to dig into the Brazilian cheese bread taco. So, did it live up to the hype?
What you've done with that cheese, tortilla, and marinated steak, delicious.
Well, Nick managed to impress the judges with a new technique, and I totally think it worked in his favor.
Very intellectual take on a surf and turf. Really high thinking, great tasting stuff.
And the best part was that the dish was chosen as one of the top 3 best dishes of the competition. However, in season 8, when the top 20 contestants were pitted against each other, the challenge that awaited them was like no other. It was the 3rd episode, and you know things are about to get real when the mystery box comes out. This time around, the mystery box was a grocery box containing 12 common ingredients found in any American home-cooked meal.
Chicken breast, ground beef, potatoes, canned tomatoes, carrots, white cheddar cheese, green apples, and chocolate.
To add to that, they also had access to the standard MasterChef staple pantry box. The home cooks had to use these ingredients to whip up a phenomenal dish within just 1 hour. Talk about a race against the clock. Once the 60 minutes were up, it was now time for the judgment. And let me tell you, the judges were not impressed. So what happened is, 3 dishes stood out, but for all the wrong reasons. They were a complete mess. But hold up, I've got some good news too. 3 home cooks managed to impress the judges with their dishes. So let's talk about the first one that caught their eyes.
Yoshika!
Yoshika Holston prepared biscuits and gravy with homemade chicken apple sausage, buttermilk pepper biscuits, crispy homemade fries underneath, and a soft scrambled egg on top. And it looked like a total delight.
I didn't have buttermilk, so I had to make it. Added buttermilk to it. Really high temperature for a short amount of time.
Chef Ramsay couldn't help but praise how incredible it tasted. He even mentioned how expensive it looked. Yoshika had nailed the breakfast dish, and he was sure that she would excel during lunch and dinner as well.
Biscuits, incredible. The potatoes underneath, they cook beautifully. Yeah, what would I change?
Next, it was time for Aaron Sanchez to taste the dish, and he was equally stunned. The judges applauded the finesse she showed in showcasing the ingredients and how well the dish was made. The flavors harmonized perfectly without overpowering each other. And the idea of baking the buttermilk and enriching the dough for the biscuits was exceptional. According to the judge, if there was one dish that should taste like it took 60 minutes to make, it was hers. The last judge to judge was Christina Tossi, and she was shocked to know that Yashika wasn't provided with chicken sausage, yet she managed to pull it off. She was so impressed that she even asked her to explain the process.
I took the chicken breast, ground it up with some spices, fresh dill, flavored it up with a little bit of cayenne, give it a little kick, little heat.
That dish was indeed exciting. Now, let's look into the story of this next contestant from Season 4, who was faced with a rather intriguing question from the judge.
Or are you trying to deceive us?
It represents where I want to be as a chef.
It was the 4th episode, and the remaining competitors entered the MasterChef kitchen for their very first mystery box challenge. They were tasked with preparing and presenting an amazing dish using only the ingredients hidden under those mystery boxes. Now, the judges were watching closely, and they weren't in the mood for any fake or deceptive dishes. It was all about showcasing the skills with the basics before moving on to the more complex recipes. And when the contestants opened their boxes, it wasn't the most appetizing sight. They were greeted with just a potato, some bacon, and a bunch of chocolates. What a peculiar combination. It made everyone wonder how someone could ace the competition with such limited ingredients.
And I thought it's a joke. What do I have to do with this?
But hey, the contestants had to prove themselves, right? They had to work their magic with these basic ingredients, and let me tell you, it was both easy and difficult at the very same time. After observing and sampling throughout the challenge, the judges took a final look to identify 3 standout dishes. Among those, one dish stood out from the rest.
That dish belongs to Beanie. Great job. Yes!
Bimmy Cruz totally impressed the judges with his poached egg over hash with tomato basil salsa. Chef Ramsay was taken aback, and all he could say was wow and absolutely sublime. Well, the taste was on point.
Dish has got finesse. It's seasoned beautifully. Great start.
Graham Elliott was equally impressed, highlighting the sweetness from the caramelized potato and the smokiness from the bacon. But Joe Bastanich, as usual, was a little skeptical.
Smells a little bit like a fake to me.
Viewers were just as shocked seeing how ridiculous Joe was being with his overly fancy concerns. Bimmy then had to explain how the books helped him picture and style his dish. However, despite a few hiccups, Bimmy left the judges amazed and proud.
Where you're heading looks good.
Thank you, chef.
It was definitely a proud moment for Bimmy. And well, he proved that he had the skills and talent to make exceptional dishes even with limited ingredients. Well, isn't that what MasterChef is all about? So these are some of the moments that made the judges' taste buds dance with delight on MasterChef. It's these instances that remind us why the judges' passion for exceptional food shines through every episode. And also why contestants put their best foot forward to make their mark in the competition. Now, surely there must be many more dishes that left a lasting impression on everyone, including yourselves. Anyway, as I'm sure you must know, it takes more than creativity to impress the judges. You need heart and passion too, and need to put it into your dish as well. Something that was second nature to this contestant right here. When it comes to Joe, he and the trash are old friends. But there have also been a bunch of dishes that have left him speechless.
Wow.
Just like this time, when one contestant brought a whole new twist to the table. Now, get this, if you're gonna take part in a cooking competition, you should know that it takes more than just skill to impress the judges. It takes heart, creativity, and a magic touch to make an impression. And guess what? This contestant right here had it all. Yes, I'm talking about Sue, a food blogger from Houston who was featured in Season 11. But here's the thing, Sue wasn't just a regular blogger. She was a passionate food lover with roots in Burma, a place where every meal tells a story of resilience and gratitude.
Just like home, with a lot more cheering people.
So, when it was time to present her signature dish, she decided to present a tantalizing Burmese noodle soup with shrimp and coconut curry as a tribute to her homeland. When Chef Sanchez and Joe walked in to check over her station, Joe was already all in for Sue's dish.
That looks amazing.
Well, I think we've already got ourselves our winner. And no, it didn't stop and start at the dish, it was the passion for her country that won our hearts.
I come from a third world country. We have to eat so that we can survive. So we are already grateful to have a bowl of rice every day where I came from.
Sue was brimming with determination to bring some of the most exotic dishes to MasterChef, and the judges were soon to see that.
Shall we taste?
As the judges dug into Sue's creation, the room filled with anticipation.
I have a thing that I say not to too many people, which is food of love.
And well, there was more appreciation yet to come her way.
And this here, Sue,
Yes, Chef.
is food of love. Well done.
Thank you very much, Chef. I'm very humbled.
That must have been one of the biggest compliments anyone who calls himself a chef can receive. Even Sanchez couldn't help but praise her creation.
That is truly something special.
It means a lot to me, Chef.
Now, when it came to Joe, one thing was clear. He was already sold. I made that much clear earlier. But when he actually started talking, there was no room for doubt.
A profound immersion into Burmese cuisine.
Thank you very much, Joe.
This dish undoubtedly stood out as a true masterpiece, transcending cultural boundaries with its exceptional taste and execution. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he was just plain wholesome.
It's the best dish I've tasted all night.
As the praise poured in, Sue found herself standing there totally blown away, her eyes sparkling with joy and gratitude. Suddenly, it hit her. Her cooking wasn't just about making good food. Well, it was about touching people's hearts and taste buds alike. And man, did she leave an impression. So when it came to handing out that apron, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it belonged to Sue.
Congratulations. Come over, please, young lady.
Thank you very much.
But hold on, turns out Joe and the judges were itching for her to leave, but maybe not for the reason you'd instinctively expect.
And go away so we can finish eating the rest of the
Yes.
If someone were to dismiss me for such a trivial reason, I'd be absolutely thrilled. It was quite evident that Joe was thoroughly enjoying himself, which came as a complete shock considering his usual, well, everything. Attitude, taste, you name it. Sue's mastery of one exceptional dish was enough to solidify her standing in the competition. But hey, she wasn't the only one that managed to impress the unimpressible Joe, because this contestant from season 13 left him speechless.
I'm Purvi from East Windsor, New Jersey. My specialty is American and Indian fusion cooking.
I'm talking about Purvi, a culinary enthusiast known for infusing Indian flavors into her dishes. In episode 1, she was all set to bring her A-game in hopes of snatching an apron.
Indian community in New Jersey is really big. I feel so proud to represent them. I'm making bundt cake with Indian flavors.
The pressure on her shoulders was something else, man. I mean, not only did she have to impress the judges to make it onto MasterChef, but she also had the weight of everyone from India counting on her success. Talk about a heavy load. And then her dessert, the vanilla bundt cakes with all the amazing Indian spices mixed in. Could it be the golden ticket that could lead her to success in the competition?
I've been doing this for the last 21 years. I can do this in my sleep.
Alright, so when it came to the judges' verdict, they were totally hooked in from the start, seriously intrigued by what she had whipped up.
Wow.
I love it. It reminds me of like an Indian festival wedding when there's just color and there's vibrance everywhere.
It looks stunning. I'm dying to get in there.
When a dish looks as beautiful and vibrant as hers, I'd expect nothing less. I mean, if it were me, I'd never dig in. Because just look at that. I'd honestly feel so bad ruining such a work of art. And the judges thought so too.
Oh, look how moist it is.
Joe, who usually takes his sweet time to give a verdict, was the first one to take a crack at describing what was in front of him.
Yeah, really good. I just got back from India. The most incredible flavors. Gives me a new appreciation of tasting your dish.
You know what? That dish was seriously off the charts, like mind-blowingly good. He was so absolutely floored by how delicious it was that he didn't even bother waiting for the rest of the gang to chime in with their thoughts before throwing his vote into the ring. It was like he couldn't contain his excitement and just had to let everyone know how awesome it was right then and there.
It's a yes for me. I really liked it.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Now, I don't know how often you've seen him make a vote like that, but for me, it's a rare sight for sure. As for the other judges, they obviously shared the same excitement that Joe did.
This bite, it is so moist and fluffy.
Thank you
like it
so
has levity and balance.
Thank you so
Definite
much.
Yes.
Purvi couldn't contain her joy when she saw how the judges thoroughly enjoyed her dish. She was overwhelmed by the impact her creation had made. Watching the judges savoring every bite felt like a victorious moment, one that she would remember for a long time. And let's be real, this vote was probably the easiest decision ever made in the history of MasterChef. Like, no contest, right? But Sanchez, you know, he totally tried to spice things up right in the middle of everything. Like, seriously, talk about drama.
I'm not gonna say yes just yet, okay? So I have to think about this for a little bit.
However, let's be real here, it was pretty obvious he was just trying to grab some attention yet again. I mean, come on, a little while later, he caved in and gave up. Classic move, am I right?
All right. For me, it's an absolute yes.
Yeah, he couldn't wait any longer. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he decided to dive right in at the first given opportunity.
It's a resounding yes.
Thank you so much.
That's 4 yeses.
Congratulations. Thank you.
In the end, with a resounding yes from each judge, Purvy's dish became the highlight of the night. But it was Joe's unexpected response that steals the show. Now, you have to agree, this dish set a standard, especially in Joe's eyes. And this next contestant came in close competition. In the high-stakes kitchen of MasterChef, one single misstep can lead to a disaster. But sometimes, amidst all the pressure, contestants manage to leave even the most seasoned judges stunned. Just like this time when Kenny, a 46-year-old Boston native, blew the judges' minds.
I've always wanted to give people the great food that I give my family. This is my opportunity to do that.
You see, Kenny may be from Boston, but his roots, now that was something both him and Joe had in common.
I had great-grandparents that came from Naples and Sicily, so I had influences from all the regions of Italy.
But let's see if that actually works in his favor, cause, you know, it may only serve to give Joe an excuse to judge him even harder. So what happened is, when Sanchez and Joe walked in to check in on him, Joe was quick to notice this odd connection.
What's your name?
My name's Kenny Palazzolo.
No doubt that you're from Boston.
I am definitely from Little Italy in the north end of Boston.
I mean, given the circumstances, his reaction was pretty normal. The connection to someone from the same country as you in a foreign land is just something else. As for the dish, it wouldn't take a genius to guess what Kenny was preparing.
A New York strip, braciole, salt and buca, stuffed with prosciutto and cheese.
Well, isn't it just so fitting that Kenny went with an Italian classic like New York strip braciole? I mean, he was all for embracing his roots, paying homage to his family's culinary legacy. But get this, it wasn't just about the dish itself. Nah, it was something totally different that really showcased his heritage in a whole new light.
What do you say? What kind of Italian do you speak?
I speak North End Italian.
Man, let me tell you, I saw it from a mile away that Joe would jump on the accent bandwagon. And guess what? When the moment of truth arrived and everyone was presenting their dishes, Kenny not only managed to win Joe over with his cooking skills, but also captured his heart in the process. It was like a double win for Kenny, leaving Joe absolutely smitten.
I brought you a New York strip, braciole, salt and buca, on a bed of vegetable risotto.
No doubt, the judges were blown away by just the plating of his dish.
Look at that presentation.
Visually, You've got it going on there, my man.
I did my best.
It looked visually stunning, but would it deliver on flavor? Now, this is where Joe really started to worry. He couldn't help but wonder if Kenny's dish would really live up to the hype.
The bresaola, not stewed in tomato sauce, it's basically a grilled stuffed steak. So this is an interpretation of what would be classic Italian.
The dish was an interpretation of classic Italian cuisine, and I don't have to tell you how important this was for Joe. As the judges took their first bite, anticipation hung in the air. And then it was time for the verdict.
That's wonderful.
You've defied the odds because I'm amazed you got that texture from a New York strip.
The judges were all here for the dish. And Kenny, well, let's just say his grin could light up the whole kitchen. But the judges realized that there was a tiny, tiny flaw.
It does need homework on that risotto.
I needed another 2 minutes.
The risotto may have needed a little bit more time, but it seems like Joe didn't care because if you replay the clip, you'll see how he was itching to go in for another bite. The dish was a hit in his books. Anyway, despite the minor flaw, the judges saw the potential Kenny had.
I can taste the passion. That's evident. For me, it is an absolute yes.
Kenny was able to create a dish that was near perfect within that given time frame, and this was proof of his impeccable skills.
It's really impressive. 100% yes for an apron for you.
As for Joe, he was willing to turn a blind eye to the minor flaw. Because, well, he was already impressed beyond measure. And maybe just a little biased. Maybe.
It's far from traditional, but it's well executed.
You see, the dish may not have been as traditional as he'd expected it to be, but he couldn't help but shower it with compliments.
And I think it's a really good interpretation of your personality into a tradition of Italian food.
Honestly, it was a pretty easy win for Kenny.
Benvenuto alla cucina di MasterChef.
Grazie, amico mio.
Prego, buona fortuna.
Grazie.
And And believe me, he was more than grateful for having received the apron, specifically because it was handed down by Joe.
Joe Bastianich, to hear him say that he believed in me and handed me that apron, such a surreal moment in my life, I'll never forget it.
Well, this one dish propelled Kenny to being one of the top contestants on the show. But that's a story for another time, so let's move on. If you ask me, I think season 12 of MasterChef was in a whole different league, with contestants from the previous seasons coming together to fight for the win once again. And in this battle, if there's one guy who stole the spotlight with minimum effort, it definitely has to be Michael.
It takes hours or days to make the broth.
Alright, so here's the deal for this episode's challenge. The contestants had teamed up with Grubhub to upgrade some of the most popular delivery items in the country. The one who nailed the challenge gets a sweet immunity pin and a spot in the top 10 with Shanika and Bowen. So each contestant got to pick a random takeout bag with a dish they had to work with. And what did Michael get?
Ramen.
Oh. Ramen? Oh yeah, the guy definitely had his work cut out for him. But that's not all. To make the task a bit more challenging, the judges decided to drop another bomb.
You will have 45 minutes to cook us an upscale gourmet version of your chosen takeout dish.
With the stakes so high, you can imagine the kind of pressure each contestant must have been going through. But was Michael up for the challenge? Well, you be the judge. Here's a look at what he decided to make.
It is very hard to make ramen. It takes hours or days to make the broth. Trying to figure out how I'm gonna elevate it and like put my twist on it.
Sounds interesting enough, right? But Michael had a good reason for picking this dish. Turns out, he had lived in Korea for a while, and so their cuisine was far from foreign to him. But guess what? This little life experience would eventually play to his advantage. As Michael confidently placed his dish in front of the judges, anticipation filled the air. But they were gonna have to taste it sooner or later, and that's exactly what they did. Joe took a cautious sip of the broth, and he was hit with an unexpected wave of heat. His reaction was priceless.
A little bit spicy.
Wow.
Maybe Michael should have dropped a spice warning or something, cause Joe definitely wasn't expecting that. It was clear that he wasn't exactly comfortable with all those Scovilles. And the camera ops were doing some serious work capturing his reaction right there. Joe struggled to find the right words to describe what he had just ingested. Whether because he genuinely couldn't think of something right away, or because the spice was preventing him from even putting a sentence together. But just as the tension reached its peak, the judges finally zeroed in on two dishes that stood out from the rest.
Michael.
So, was the bold flavor a risk worth taking? Let's find out now. Regardless of the initial shock that Joe had received, he was actually pretty impressed with the dish once his taste buds had recovered.
Everything looks super elevated.
As for the other judges, they chimed in with more appreciation.
The presentation is clever. You're using the crispy little rice noodles as a textural component. Looking forward to trying it.
And since one judge had already experienced the heat before anyone else dug in, Michael decided to warn them.
Of course, I like my ramen spicy.
Yeah, no kidding. But let's see if Chef Ramsay would be able to take the heat.
Dish is delicious. Love the take on that Korean influence, especially with the heat.
Hey, I'll give that a passing grade. As for Sanchez, he straight up said that the dish was award-winning, and a little bit of spice was never gonna faze him. If that wasn't enough, Joe had more to share.
I like the intensity of it. I don't know if you could eat a whole bowl of it, but all the components in the dish make sense. Very strong.
Well, sometimes taking risks can lead to greatness, and things luckily worked out in Michael's favor this time. Well, these contestants managed to leave Joe shocked with their delectable dishes, but there was this one contestant who left Joe dumbfounded for all the wrong reasons. But here's the real question. Are we gonna see another signature Joe dish thrashing? Go ahead and drop your guesses in the comments section down below. But for now, in Season 3, Episode 8, the tension was palpable as the contestants faced the day's dreaded elimination challenge. The challenge revolved around the judges' favorite desserts, and Felix sadly landed with the Herculean task of pleasing Joe.
My favorite dessert, tiramisu.
As the clock ticked down, the pressure mounted as Felix struggled to prepare a dish worthy of the judges' praise. When Joe decided to come check on her, he wasn't too happy about how things were going.
Well, you're not going to put it in a form? How are you going to make it?
On a plate, kind of more freeform.
Wow, that's risky.
Things weren't off to a great start. Regardless of Joe's concern, Felix was feeling confident.
Anyone can go home today, and you're in a competitive group.
I'm not going home today.
Well, we'll see about that. Anyway, with time running out, Felix was the first person to present her tiramisu to the judges. But even before she laid the dish before them, Joe happened to notice her expression.
Let's begin with tiramisu. Felix?
That was brutal. I mean, he sure didn't have any high hopes when it came to this particular dish. He was beyond disappointed.
You saw the standard, we put it up there, we asked you to execute it, and you come back with this. It's so disappointing.
And if that wasn't enough, he then dropped another brutal comment.
If it's bad, you will go home.
Hell yeah. There's no place for people who don't meet the standards on MasterChef. That's the one rule the judges have set. Either you follow or go home. And believe me, things weren't exactly looking up for Felix. But when Joe took a bite of her dish, he couldn't help but ask her one simple question.
Why did you put nuts in here?
I like mac nuts.
Macadamia nuts and an Italian tiramisu?
I mean, how could she not know that? But just as Graham decided to taste the dish, Felix was already tearing up.
I'm sorry, I have to eat this.
Well, it's not even eating it, it's looking at it.
Like, to see her come up with something like this was totally out of character. And his reaction was quite expected. He deemed the dish terrible. And when it came to Chef Ramsay, he didn't hold back either.
Way too sweet, macadamia nuts, nothing. Looks as sad as you do, because it is a mess.
Well, it just looks like it wasn't her day. The tiramisu, if you can even call it that, was just a sad little puddle of mush. And well, according to the famous chef, this was Felix's worst performance on the show. If Chef Ramsay dropping that dire warning was any indication, Felix found himself in the bottom 3. Fortunately for him, Scott was the one who was sent home instead. Talk about dodging a bullet, whew.
To Scott. And get back to your station.
Good luck, baby.
So, can you think of more times when Joe truly relished a dish? Or some times when it took him a few seconds to process what was put in front of him before, you know, throwing it in the dumpster? Make sure to drop them in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on my post notifications. Plus, hey, don't forget to drop by my social media pages if you want to stay up to date with all my latest content. Now, wait, if you thought this video was crazy, then guess what? I just dropped another mind-blowing video right here, so be sure to check it out.